Hi guys, hey, Steve Buchenroth here, and the purpose of this video today is to review the systems in the Diamond Twin Star that we talked about on the last video. So let's kind of go through some systems review, make sure we've got a good handle on everything. So we'll kind of start from the bottom of the column right here. Remember, right here, we've got the ability to transfer fuel, but when would we need to do that? Well, anytime the left tank or the right tank, then there's a difference between the two by 5 gallons or more, we want to look at cross-feeding fuel. Remember, when we cross-feed fuel, we don't transfer fuel. We simply feed it to another engine. So let's say, let's say this left engine had 6 gallons more, this left tank had 6 gallons more in it than this tank did. And we want to cross-feed fuel. Well, this one's heavy and this one's light. So we would want to feed everything from this left tank. So in order to do that, we need to place the right fuel selector in the abnormal position. Remember, the left engine feeds from the left tank when it's in the normal position. The right engine feeds from the right tank when it's in the normal position. So if I take the right tank over here, if I take I pull this lever and put it to the abnormal position, well, the right engine feeds from the left. So there's different mnemonic ways people remember it, little phrases. I always just think about, hey, if I want to feed the right from the left or the left from the right, it's abnormal, so I simply pull the lever into the abnormal position. That's my thought process. Moving on up the column, of course, we've got our power levers, and then we move on up, we've got our ability to set our brakes, to lock them. Right here, left, right. So this left engine obviously gives us defrost, and the right engine gives us cabin heat. Here's our trim wheel, and this is alternate air. This seems to confuse people sometimes during training. Remember, we're going to pull alternate air anytime our engine starts diminishing in power and we suspect induction icing. So alternate air routes air around the filter, the air filter in the induction system, rather than trying to bring the air through the filter. More than likely, this is going to happen when we've pulled ice crystals or induction icing into the induction area and it's blocked up the filter. Don't get alternate air confused with alternate static air. Over here is an alternate static air lever. We kind of drew it on this poster. And on this alternate static air, that's going to give us alternate static air from the cockpit to the static system. This is going to give us alternate air into the engine through the induction system, and that's going to come from inside the cowling. A common confusion is it comes from inside the cockpit. No, no, no. It comes from inside the cowling, routes it around the filter. Some other areas to think about. Anytime you put your gear down and you don't get 3 green, we want to take a look at what we think the issue is and then test the gear. So let's say you put your gear down and you got a green, green, no green, but no red. Well, if you go with 2 green, no green, and no red, chances are highly likely that your bulb's burned out because you don't have a red light coming on. Green, green, no red. Probably looking at bulb burned out. We could go up here and test this. When we test this, we would expect to not see this light come on. So we've got the 2 green, we've got no green, we've got no red. We test it, and lo and behold, no light comes on. That's pretty much telling you your hypothesis is correct, that you thought your bulb was burned out. This, of course, should come on when you test it. Now, let's say it's late at night and you can't get someone to give you a visual on that gear. Maybe you flew an ILS down the minimums, you put the gear down, the intercepted ILS, and all you had was 2 green, and no red. Well, you can now turn around and pull your power levers back, right? Because if you pull your power levers back below the set point, 20 or 25% on this airplane, and you don't get a horn, well, your gear is probably down. If that's not good enough for you, well, you can always turn around and put your gear or put your flaps to full and no horn again. It's just another safe way of knowing your gear is down. Now, let's say you get green, green, no green, and you get a red. Well, now you've got something telling you your gear's unsafe. So now when you test this, you're probably going to expect to see a green light here because you went green, green, no green, red. And the red says you don't have a gear down unlocked. And I bet you if you push that button in right here and test, now that bulb's going to go green. And that's telling you, hey, you've got a gear problem. Now, anytime in this Diamond Twin Star you test the gear, you push the gear fire test light, that's what this is, gear fire test light, you should get, in a normal situation, 3 green, 1 red for the gear. Remember, you have absolutely no annunciator lights up here for the gear. This is simply going to be a fire loop test right here. It's going to tell you you've got left engine fire light and a right engine fire light, no matter what's happening down here. So you need to remember this is a common test and a common horn. If you're flying along and you hear a gear horn, well, you're probably hearing a fire horn, and you'd get a fire light up here. If you put the gear down, or you pull your throttles back and you get and you don't have the gear down and you get the gear horn, well, that's all about the gear. So 4 gear lights, 2 fire lights, 1 common horn. All right, moving on along. If I go out there and I test, I go out there, I pre-flight my airplane, and I bring on my electric master, I should hear a noise, something like, "Meow." Well, that just ran the hydraulic pump. As soon as we turn that on, the hydraulic pump runs, and the hydraulic pump fills up the hydraulic accumulator. And when it fills up the hydraulic accumulator, we now have nitrogen pressure pushing hydraulic fluid in the accumulator that's built pressure. And now when I raise and lower the gear, I don't have to wait on a motor. I've got instantaneous pressure to put the gear down or put the gear up. All right, when we come along and we look at the start switches right here, we actually call them engine master, right engine master, left engine master. When we put this switch on, for say on the engine right here, engine master, there's going to be at least 5 things happen. I look outside, and I go outside and I look at the propeller, and I can see the propeller barely move. What happens when I bring the switch up? I'm pushing hydraulic fluid, gear. I'm pushing oil, gearbox oil, out of the gearbox. It's under a pressure from a gearbox accumulator, and I'm pushing that oil into the prop to push the prop off its locks. Now, I can also remember the other thing I'm doing here is I'm bringing up the engine, powering up the engine ECU, I'm powering up the alternator excitation batteries, and I'm also powering up the glow plug and making sure the starter relay works. So I can kind of think of it like this: propeller, engine ECUs, alternator excitation batteries. I can then move on down here and say starter, relay, and glow plugs. So those 5 things happen. If I'm looking at the right one, I start over here: propeller, glow plug, starter relay, alternator excitation battery, ECUs. So that's what's happening when I do it. This is just the easy ways to remember that. And these buttons right here, these ECU test buttons on the ground, when I push these and hold them with the power levers in idle, when I push and hold with power levers in idle, what I'm doing is a self-test on the ECUs. Okay, now we have 2 ECUs. We have a left-hand ECU on the airplane and a right-hand ECU. Each ECU has 2 channels. So if the right-hand engine ECU is set to auto, as it should be, and the left-hand is set to auto, as it should be, then what happens is if I take off and I lose a channel, I lose a computer board on that ECU, it's going to auto swap to the other channel. So we always take off an auto, and it will auto swap to B. So we have An A and a B on the left, an A and B on the right, we always take off in auto. Now, when we're up in the air, let's say we get an annunciator light. Annunciator light shows over here. Well, we get an annunciator light over here. We should usually be able to go over here and cancel the light. Pushing the appropriate button based upon left-hand ECU or right-hand ECU, pushing the appropriate ECU button will cancel that light in flight. It does not reset an ECU. It simply cancels the message. And if if we were to continue flying that plane and then land, you will not be able to cancel it. It always has to go back to the mechanic, go in and see what that was. So again, on the ground, these buttons do an ECU self-test. In the air, these buttons will cancel a message, but only if it's not an ECU failure. Okay, moving on around here. I missed this one right here. When you're in the chocks running and you're getting ready to move out of the ramp, taxi away, you're always going to have two caution lights here. They're going to say pitot heat off, stall heat off. And if you flip the pitot heat on, then what's going to happen is the pitot heat off light will go out and the stall heat off light will go out, but the stall heat off will only go out for 8 seconds. The squash switch knows you're still on the ground, and it doesn't want to let the stall heat go that hot for more than 8 seconds. So it fails down to 50%. So taxiing out, pitot heat off, stall heat off. If you were to flip that on, they go out, but in 8 seconds, stall heat light comes back on because it failed down to 50%. And now I'm wrong with what I said. It's not stall heat off that comes back on. It now says stall heat fail. Stall heat fails what comes on. Okay, these of course are the night rheostat lights. If you have this off and you bring it on in the day and it's over here somewhere, well, that's on night dim. And if you do that, you're not going to see any of your gear lights and you're not going to see your flap lights. Had more than one occasion where somebody gets ready to land and says, I don't have any green lights, and it's in the day. You're like, hey, check this switch right here, turn to off or turn to full bright. But over in here, you won't see any of your lights at all on gear or flaps. Floodlight switch, when you turn that floodlight switch on, you're turning on a light that runs right underneath here. That's your floodlight switch. Now, let's go through probably the big emergency here. Let's say you're flying along and you lose an engine. And you're dealing with an engine failure and you get that put together and you're trying to make it to your runway somewhere. And what happens is in no time, maybe it's not your lucky day and you've lost an alternator. So now you've got one engine down. Of course, you've lost the alternator. Now you've got another engine running, but you've lost that alternator. Got that one running, but you've lost an alternator. So you've got one good engine and no alternators. So let's think about your timeline of events. What's going to happen within 30 minutes or so, roughly, you're going to lose your battery. And when you lose the main ship battery, you're going to lose your electrical system. How are you going to know that? Well, you're not going to get red X's. You're not going to get the courtesy of red X's over your MFD and PFD. You're going to get blank screens. And when you get blank screens, you know you lost your electric. And you have now moved from operating your engines, running your engines off of batteries for the FADEC ECU system to now backup ECU batteries that were installed during an AD. When the DA-42 was initially built, all you had was batteries. But due to an accident, they moved to an AD that put backup batteries in underneath each back seat. And those backup batteries only provide power to the ECUs. So, summarizing, you lose your alternator, one engine, you're good. You lose your alternator on a second engine, or you lose that second engine, you've started the clock. In 30 minutes, you're going to drain your main ship battery, and maybe for 30 minutes more, you're going to run off the ECU batteries. And when those ECU batteries go out, both engines have shut off. So you've started a clock on that when you lost that second alternator. Now, we already said you won't get the courtesy of red X's. You're just going to get black screens. But what else is going to happen right there is you no longer have any electric other than enough to run your FADEC and ECU. And that means what with your gear? Well, a lot of people think the gear has to come down by emergency. Yeah, that'll get it down, but you're going to lose your ability to keep your gear up. You're going to be single engine, and your pressure is going to start bleeding down. Your electrics went out, and you are going to have your gear down whether you like it or not. You're going to be dragging gear on a single engine, and that's going to be a handful. And then let's say you want to go land at an airport somewhere, and it's after dark. You don't have any lights to land at that airport, and you better hope you have a good lit runway, as well as you better have a long one, because you're not going to get your flaps down either. So remember, when you're operating strictly off of ECU batteries, you're going to get your gear down. You're not going to have any flaps. You're not going to have any lights. And that's the big thing you want to make sure you're aware of. Now, when you lose your battery, you certainly want to come up here, break this safety wire that's right here, flip this switch up, and it's kind of odd because you pull the toggle switch down, and that turns on your emergency battery. And that emergency battery gives you 90 minutes of attitude indicator and 90 minutes of floodlight. That's all it does. Okay, so you still got pitot static, you still got an airspeed indicator, got the static for the altimeter, and you've still got an attitude indicator for up to 90 minutes. From a system standpoint, of what's going to happen when you lose your electric, that's probably just a pretty good overview of it. Remember, over here too, you've got your ability to see all of your buses right here. We have a left-hand main bus, and we have a left-hand bus, and we have a left-hand engine ECU bus. Then we have a right-hand engine ECU bus, a right-hand bus, and a right-hand main bus. And you've also got a hot battery bus. That's a pretty good little summary of what's I can go over with you on the systems. But for more detail, go back and look at our last video where we went through the POH and covered them at a much deeper level. Thank you. Have a great day.